Hello, I'm Kenny here for ProVideoCoalition.com to talk about the Canon C200. It's been out for a while, but I was able to get a review copy by greasing a couple palms. No, I'm just kidding. They just lent it to me for a couple weeks, so I took it out. I didn't look anything up. I just took it out and shot 2 music videos with it just to see what would happen. I have used the C100 Mark II for 3 or 4 years now, so I'm pretty intimately familiar with this form factor. So I figured the easiest way to test it would just be to put it right in my workflow, see what happens. And come to find out, everything worked pretty swell. So I'll go through what I shot and what I learned and what I liked and the very few things that I didn't like. But I'm not really going to touch on specs too much because this video is attached to an article written for ProVideoCoalition.com, which will have kind of more of that. But also, if you've looked anything about this camera up, you already know what the general discussion is around it. And I don't really want to touch on that because A, everyone else has done it, and B, I don't really care. I prefer the image. I care about the image. I don't care about the numbers. I don't care about what bit depth necessarily until it matters, right? Until you actually do the thing and you're like, oh, I need a deeper color depth, bit depth because XYZ, right? I need 4K for XYZ. I don't just like it because it's there. Actually, on that note, I'm going to let our affiliates know that we're going to be going a little long this episode because I tend to ramble. Anyway, to get the specs portion out of the way, just in case you haven't seen anything about this camera, the highlight feature here is that it shoots RAW internally. That is not necessarily common with many cameras, and especially when you get into the more expensive cinema cameras, it's very rare. It shoots that RAW up to 60 frames in 12-bit, 10-bit up to 60 frames, but 12-bit in general at 24 frames, which you're probably using. To one CFast card, which is a bit of I wish there was 2. Not the end of the world. I was able to dump a 256 gig card, which gives you about 36 minutes of footage, in about 8 minutes. So if you've got 2 of those cards and a laptop, you can just, there's no downtime. Just plug the new card in, have someone watch that. And remember, back up to 2 drives. 2 is 1, 1 is none. You've also got 2 SD card slots on the back where you can record regular MP4 in 4K up to 60 frames again, and it also has a 120 frame mode in 1080, which I found to be not as good as the other modes. Now, if you're going to shoot 60, like on the C100 Mark II, 60 frames is as fast as your slow-mo can go, and I'm fine with that. Like the 120 is just a little bit of like, oh, and it looked good. If it's properly lit, it looks great, but left a little bit to be desired when compared to the other frame, just the other looks that you get out of it. So there is that. One thing real quick while I'm on that subject, most cameras, at least in America here, are at 59.9 hertz, right? This one can do between 59 and 50, which is the UK standard, which is more common now, but back in the day was kind of rare. But it also has a 24 hertz setting, which allows you to shoot actual 24p instead of the 2398, which the body, it's pretty similar. I was able to use it exactly like I do the C100 Mark II. It's got an EF mount, which you can actually switch to PL, which is kind of cool. It's got internal NDs up to 10 stops. The C100 Mark II that I have only goes to 6, and it's also a physical wheel that you have to move, which is not like annoying, but it's always kind of bugged me. This has just a little electronic button you push, and it just does it for you. I like that. Little simple things like that make your life a little easier, especially when you use them a lot. I enjoy it. And also, probably one of the most flagship-y things that I think doesn't go stated enough, internal XLRs, right there. Okay, 2 of them. Amazing. On my camera, I have it in a Red Rock micro cage, and I have to ditch that top handle. If I ever need to run audio, I gotta put the top handle on and screw it in, which isn't too big of a deal, but kind of whips around. It's not stable. And then this cable, which carries audio in my camera, this is just video for this one. You plug it in and out a lot, and it kind of gets loose or whatever. None of that here. This actually is the C700 sensor. So the C100 Mark II is the C500 sensor, but downres to 1080 quite elegantly in camera. This is the C700 sensor. I assume that does 4K. Again, I haven't looked up the C700, but in any case, the 4K out of this looks fantastic, and in RAW, it looks insane. On that note, again, I said I wasn't really going to go into specs, but people focus too much on numbers, and I'm just telling you, yes, this is 420 8-bit, but it's the best 420 8-bit you'll ever see. I'll die on that hill. It looks fantastic. With proper color grading, it's excellent. Now, like with any camera, if you're not shooting RAW, if you're shooting to a compressed format, if you're shooting to log, you need to make sure that you're precise with your exposures. The thing about RAW is it allows you a lot of that flexibility in post, which, you know, if you're an excellent cinematographer, or you're shooting for yourself and you know what you can, where you can fudge the details and where you can't, that's great. But if you're working for other people, you're going to want to be more precise, obviously. It will record proxy to the SD cards, which is in 2K, and it's 35 megabits. As it is proxy, the regular MP4 is 150. But I'll show you right here, just a quick frame from the music videos. Not exactly the same, but pretty close. So it looks good. As you can see, I have the 15 to 47 on here from Canon. That's because they sent me one. This is actually Stray Angel's camera and lens. I am at Stray Angel right now. This is actually a Duclos modded Canon. Shout out to Matthew Duclos. But overall, this is the rig that I ran. You'll notice that I have a Noga arm here, and that is because I do not like the top handle on the that comes with this the C200. I noticed that you know, on the C100, it's at the back of the camera, so you're always looking down, and that's kind of annoying. But the top handle with the C300 puts it more in front of your face. That's great. But this one, even though it's rugged and built well, it just didn't. It was too finicky, I guess. It bothered me, so I just replaced it because nice thing about these Canons, everything's standardized. We'll get to that in a second. So I just ran a Noga arm, and that allowed me when I was shooting to just undo it, and like if I needed a low angle or a high angle, I would just, you know, move it wherever I wanted it to go. It's very easy to do it this way. So if you're going to get one of these cameras or rent one, I recommend getting a Noga arm or an Infinity arm or something like that, so you can do that. It'll just make your life easier, and you don't lose any functionality with that. And you can even use it as a top handle if you so choose. Like I said, Canon sent me this lens. I used it for one music video, the Mahalo music video, and I used my Sigma 18-35 for the other one. This lens isn't part of the review, but it is a nice lens. If you're renting, go for it. Otherwise, it's 24 grand, so maybe, I don't know, maybe you're balling. So, how did I use this? The first video was for Mahalo, which was this rig and this lens. I actually did go completely handheld with this rig. So I had a monopod coming out of the top, which I tend to do all the time, to rest against my head so that I could get really stable motion. Obviously, having a big, heavy lens like this does allow you a bit more of a, what I would call cinematic feel to your image, because everything you're used to seeing in cinema is filmed with a heavy camera, so that inertia is imparted upon the image in a way that is sort of subconscious. And the heavier your camera is, the more closely you will mimic that sort of look. So that was nice. Aside from trying to pull focus with a big, huge focus throw, which was a little annoying, this worked quite well. So even though you're not really supposed to, I did use it this way, and having everything from 15 to 47 was quite nice. The focus assist features were necessary in that case, so you've got your standard, your peaking that you can change colors on. I was able to change my frame guides, which isn't focus assist, but I was able to change my frame guides exactly like I have on my Canon C100 Mark II. Honestly, functionally, they're almost the same. One functionality that's way better is this monitor. Now, the monitor itself is kind of whatever, same problem where if you're out in the sun, maybe it's kind of hard to see. With this, it is a touch screen. So when I was shooting the second video for Tiffany Dunn, I shot on the, like I said, the Sigma 18-35, and that was so that I could lean into Canon's world-class dual pixel autofocus, which is another hill I'll die on. It's the best autofocus in the world. Because it is a touch screen, I was able to just poke on what I wanted to be in focus, and that thing would then be in focus. The other thing that's awesome is face detect. and it works really good. Like, it almost never loses the face unless you're like way off to the side or way too close or whatever. It even, with the beard, it was able to detect it. So if I was moving kind of slow or whatever, I was propped up or anything like that, like this shot where she's just singing straight to camera, I was able to use face detect. For anything where I was moving really quick, I would lean that monopod, like I said, up against my head, and then with a smaller lens, obviously, because I could free up my left hand, because the monopod acted as my left hand, I was able to poke on my screen as I ran around where I wanted it to be in focus, and it would flawlessly grab it and stick. So that was pretty awesome. I didn't have to use these XLR jacks on either of those shoots as they were music videos, but it does have scratch audio, so I was able to use that just fine. And also, I did use them for some 2-camera stuff that I shot, kind of like this, and they worked great. You know, it's kind of hard to screw that up, although I'm sure someone has. The preamps in here are good. Both of those videos I was able to shoot in one day each, and both of those videos I had a 256 CF card. I was shooting to RAW on both of them, and I got, like I said, 36 minutes of footage for each of them, which did mean that towards the end of the day, like with the last couple takes, I was going like, we have 3 minutes, what do you want to get? You know, and at that point, you're in B-roll territory. Hopefully you've front-loaded all of the important stuff. So I will say that was a little frustrating, but also I don't own a laptop, so I didn't really have an option, but I did get away with it. I think a 512 card is kind of where you're going to want to be if you're doing stuff like that, or 256s with dumping, which is safer. With RAW, you need to know what your post-production workflow is going to be like. As I was editing all my own stuff, and I've built my own PC, I knew it could handle it, and sure enough, it did. I've edited every version of RAW under the sun on my computer, and it's not even that beefy. For the nerds out there, it's a 1070 with an i7 7700K, 32 gigs of RAM, and it's fine. You know, with this RAW, I have to play it back in Premiere at 1/8 quality just to play it back, you know, with no hiccups. But with maybe some more RAM, maybe a little bit beefier processor, it's a couple-year-old system, you'll be fine. But in general, for just strict editing, you don't need it to be at the highest quality. For coloring, yeah, but at that point I'm in DaVinci anyway, and DaVinci actually plays it back with minimal real-time loss. So there's a little nerdy aside for everyone. If you're shooting for yourself and you don't have a computer like that, or you're shooting for someone else, the RAW might trip you up a little bit because you may have to transcode. Like I said, this shoots to proxies, so maybe consider that instead. But if you do transcode, obviously your file sizes are going to be a lot bigger because you'll have both of them. So that's a consideration, but that RAW is really lovely. That being said, I'm used to shooting in C-Log on that C100 Mark II, and the MP4 files out of this, like I said before, fantastic. You honestly, you don't know how good an image is until you can use the camera yourself and edit it yourself. So some of you won't believe me, some of you will. I hope you will. Give it a shot. Go hit up Stray Angel and rent this one, this specific one. Give it a try. Like, this camera aside, when you're choosing gear, think about the end result, not what makes you cool, you know? Things I didn't like I said, the top handle, the CFast thing is a little rough, but luckily it's not proprietary. That's what I said at the beginning of this video. Proprietary stuff sucks. I hate it. You know, it's a CFast card. They're standard. SD cards are standard. If you're out in the field and you forgot your SD cards, go to a CVS and buy them. You can just find them places. CFast a little harder and it's a little more expensive, but you only, you know, buy once, cry once. Like I said, this is a video that's supposed to be attached to an article on ProVideo, so this is kind of my ruminations and discussions about it as they kind of come to mind. But check out that article for maybe a more succinct opinion, unless you're already reading it, in which case, welcome to how I make videos. So thanks for spending the time with me. I hope that was informative. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being you. And I will see you on the next video.